Vacancy. Chapter 1. The Deal. Nobody goes to Moosehead Lake in March. That's what Sarah kept telling herself as she guided her Subaru along the slick roads of Route 15, past Greenville's shuttered summer cottages and dark storefronts. But when you find a lakeside cabin on Airbnb for $90 a night, and you're a broke graduate student trying to finish your thesis, you don't ask questions. You just book it. The listing had seemed too good to be true. Historic 1920s cabin. Complete privacy, writer's paradise. The host, someone named Eleanor, had only one review from 3 years ago. Unforgettable experience. Changed my life. Sarah had laughed at that. Now, watching the snow start to fall in the gathering darkness, she wasn't laughing anymore. Her phone's GPS stuttered, then died. Of course. But the host's instructions had been clear. Past the abandoned Moosehead Inn, left at the lightning-struck pine, half a mile to the end of Loon Point Road. The Moosehead Inn loomed ahead, a Victorian monster with boarded windows and a caved-in porch. Sarah slowed, counting 3 dead pines before spotting the one split down the middle, its top hanging like a broken neck. Chapter 2. Check-in. The cabin crouched at the edge of the lake like something waiting. Its windows reflected the last gray light of day, and Sarah had the unsettling feeling that someone was watching her from behind that glass. But that was ridiculous. Eleanor had been clear in her messages. Complete privacy. You won't see another soul. The key was under the moose statue, just as promised. Inside, the cabin smelled of pine and something else, something sweet and medicinal, like old liniment. The furniture was all antiques, real ones, not the fake distressed stuff you find in tourist traps. A massive stone fireplace dominated the main room, and above it hung a portrait of a woman in 1920s dress, her smile slight and knowing. Sarah set up her laptop on the heavy oak table, pulled out her thesis notes on disappearance narratives in New England folklore, and tried to ignore how the woman in the portrait seemed to be watching her. The Wi-Fi password didn't work. Neither did her hotspot. But that was fine. She had everything downloaded. She'd come here to write, after all, to focus, to finally finish this thesis that had consumed 3 years of her life. That's when she noticed the guest book. Chapter 3. The Records. The book was old, its leather cover cracked and faded. Sarah opened it carefully, expecting to find the usual tourist scrawls about beautiful sunsets and peaceful mornings. Instead, she found this. March 15th, 1923. Finally found the perfect place to finish my novel. Eleanor is the most gracious host. The silence here is absolute. Sometimes I think I can hear my own thoughts echoing off the lake. March 17th, 1923. The words flow like water here. Eleanor says this place has a way of pulling stories out of people. She's right. I've written more in 2 days than in the past year. March 19th, 1923. The dreams are so vivid now. I can barely tell when I'm awake. Eleanor says this is normal. Part of the process. March 21st, 1923. Eleanor showed me what's beneath the lake. God help me. God help me. God help. The entry stopped there. Sarah flipped through more pages, finding similar patterns, excited arrivals, increasing confusion, abrupt endings. All in March. All mentioning Eleanor. The most recent entry was from 3 years ago. Changed my life. Just like Eleanor promised. Sarah's hands were shaking as she closed the book. The portrait above the fireplace seemed different now. The woman's slight smile had widened, showing teeth. That's when the laptop screen flickered to life, despite being unplugged. A Word document opened itself, and words began appearing. Welcome, Sarah. Shall we begin your story? Chapter 4. The Process. Sarah ran. Of course she ran. She made it halfway to her car before realizing she'd left the keys inside. The snow was falling harder now, thick flakes that seemed to whisper as they fell. The lake had disappeared behind a white wall. When she turned back to the cabin, Eleanor was standing in the doorway. Not the Eleanor from the portrait. This Eleanor was something else. Her edges weren't quite solid, like ink bleeding into wet paper. Her smile, though, that was very solid indeed. We have so much work to do, Eleanor said, her voice like pages rustling. Your thesis is fascinating, truly. Disappearance narratives? Oh, the irony. Sarah backed away. What are you? I'm a collector, Eleanor said, stepping forward. She left no footprints in the snow. Of stories. Of writers. Of potential. Do you know how many great works were never finished? How many stories were left untold? I give them a place to be completed. All of them. Forever. The snow swirled between them, and in it, Sarah saw faces. So many faces. All with the same desperate look she'd seen in her mirror during late-night writing sessions. All of them typing, endlessly typing. Your thesis, Eleanor continued. It's not really about disappearances, is it? It's about you. About your fear of disappearing without leaving your mark. Without finishing your story. She was right. God help her, she was right. I can help you finish it, Eleanor said. I can help you write something unforgettable. Something that will last forever. Just like all the others. The snow was up to Sarah's knees now, but it wasn't cold. It felt like paper, millions of pages wrapping around her legs, pulling her down. All you have to do, Eleanor smiled, is say yes. Chapter 5, The Review. They found Sarah's car 3 days later, buried in snowdrifts at the end of Loon Point Road. The cabin, when the police finally reached it, was empty. No laptop, no thesis notes, no guest book. Just a portrait above the fireplace, showing a woman in 1920s dress. And Sarah. The police report noted signs of forced entry, but no footprints in the snow. Sarah's family posted missing person flyers all over Greenville. The local paper ran a story about the dangers of staying in remote cabins during Maine winters. 2 weeks later, a new review appeared on the Airbnb listing. Unforgettable experience. Finally finished my thesis. Eleanor was the perfect host. The silence here is absolute, broken only by the sound of keys clicking, stories growing, words flowing like dark water. Time doesn't exist here, not really. There's only the work. The endless, beautiful work. Changed my life. Just like Eleanor promised. The listing is still active. The cabin is still $90 a night. Eleanor is still accepting reservations. But only in March. Only from writers. Only from those who need to finish their stories. Are you still working on yours?